That's the key of what share of voice is really diving deep into our visibility specifically across both organic and advertising placements on Amazon. So why is that important? Why is that a metric we need to know? You could have the best product in the world, the best imaging in the world, really high click-through rates, really high conversion rates, but if nobody sees your product, all of that's not going to really matter in terms of long-term growth for your brand. Awesome. So just quickly starting off, what is share of voice, right? For those of us who may not be familiar. So obviously, if you're an advertiser on Amazon, if you own an Amazon brand, if you're helping Amazon brands with their search engine optimization, what really matters for you is where you're showing up in the rankings, right? That's going to be one of the biggest keys in determining the growth and performance of your brand. Obviously, we want to make sure we're showing up on relevant keywords. We want to have good imaging, so we're going to get click-through rates. But a lot of those things don't matter if nobody's seeing you. Right? If nobody can find your product, then you could have the best product page in the world, you could have the best product in the world, but you're not going to be able to get a steady increase in purchase volume there. So share of voice is going to help us identify opportunities and track growth across different keywords from both an advertising and an organic perspective in terms of changes in your visibility and product ranking, right? So I'll be able to see things like what's the highest rank that I had this week for the keyword drones, right? That could be an easy use case. Maybe I could see what was my best organic ranking, what was my best ad ranking. I could see of the first page of the search term drones, what percentage of the ad placements or the organic placements were taken by my brand. Maybe what percentage were taken by competitor brands. If I wanted to identify opportunities where maybe these are competitors for conquesting opportunities or competitors I just need to keep a close eye on. So get good idea into coverage and then just measure our overall visibility. How many search terms are we showing up on? What placements are we showing up on those search terms? How much search volume do those search terms have? What is the opportunity? What is the market size that we're being able to capture? And then what are the opportunities that we have to continue to improve that? So really, that's the key of what share of voice is really diving deep into our visibility specifically across both organic and advertising placements on Amazon. So why is that important? Why is that a metric we need to know? I think we already touched on, right? You could have the best product in the world, the best imaging in the world, really high click-through rates, really high conversion rates. But if nobody sees your product, all of that's not going to really matter in terms of long-term growth for your brand, right? You need to be getting your product in front of eyes, and then you can see the growth of the other tactics that you're putting into place, right? You're probably spending money on ads. You probably have some type of search engine optimization strategy, and that's going to help us validate the impact of those, right? If I make a change to my product title to try to get more visibility on the search term, maybe wireless headphones, for an example, I need to be able to come in and me just going on Amazon and searching in wireless headphones, it's going to be hard for me to track what that trended data is. So having a share of voice tool is going to allow me to capture that in one place and see where am I seeing performance increases or decreases over time on a keyword that I'm putting a focus on. You can also track what competitors are doing, right? If I notice that my cost per click on a certain keyword set went really high this week, I might be able to go in and see, okay, which competitors are gaining in their share of voice share there, right? They're showing up in higher placements. And that's an indicator to me that maybe those competitors are just going really heavy after those keywords. They're paying high bids, and that's why I'm seeing cost per click increases. Right. And then finally, it's going to allow us to identify gaps in what our visibility is, right? My product might be doing really well. Right. I might, again, if I'm a headphone brand, maybe I'm doing really well on terms for noise cancellation. I'm doing really well on terms for comfort, but I'm also a product that's on the cheaper side of the marketplace. So I want to go after terms for people who are searching like budget-friendly headphones, right? Well, maybe I'm not doing too well on those terms, but if my product's doing well overall, I may not think about that. But share of voice is going to allow us to dive into specific search terms and specific search themes to identify not just where are we doing well, but where do we have opportunities. So I might see, hey, your average rank for budget terms in that category is 30th, right? But you have lots of competitors who are doing really well and have high share of voice percentages on those terms specifically. So that can then become a focus in both your ad and organic strategy, whether that's targeting those keywords more, whether that's targeting those competitors, right? We're able to not only see where we're doing well, but find gaps where we have to continue to improve. Why is share of voice sometimes not an operating metric that we use, right? I think share of voice, a lot of people are familiar with share of voice, what share of voice may be, why share of voice can be beneficial, but share of voice can be really tough to track. Amazon doesn't natively provide us this data, right? There are some things that we can see in terms of performance on a keyword level. If you're a seller, there's search query performance reports, which Intentwise also supports, and we've done some webinars about in the past, which is definitely a very beneficial data set, but it's not really going to capture, right? Am I seeing placement shifts, right? I might see a shift in impression share and I can kind of infer that, but I don't know which ASIN that's coming on. I don't know Is that an ad or organic change, right? That's I don't know what day maybe it specifically came on, what competitors taking that share, right? There's still limitations in that tracking. Even past that, right? I myself could go search for the product a couple of times a day, but then I have to store all that data, right? I got to take down what's every placement every day, and that's just going to be really painful to track over a consistent basis, and that's going to make it really hard to trend line your data, right? I think that's what we're going to see is the most beneficial or in-depth way to look at our share of voice data is looking at it over time. You could probably look at a snapshot, and that would allow you to identify opportunities where you're doing well currently or where you have opportunities to grow. But if I start implementing changes, right, I start making changes to my title, my descriptions, my ad strategy to go after those opportunity keywords that I found, I'm able to see that data trend line to see, am I actually seeing improvements against that? So, well, since there's so much data to be captured there, it can be hard to trend line that data, specifically as you break it down to looking at, well, how is a specific ASIN doing, or how is a specific brand as a whole doing? And then how is Intentwise solving this? So we're going to dive more into this, but we'll look at some different things like trended charts that show both you and your competitors' data at a brand, product, or keyword level, really broken down there, competitor comparisons, and then the ability to filter and roll up our data as well. So I promised you not too much slides. We're going to jump into the actual platform and look at some specific use cases now. Again, if you're not an Intentwise, let's take a step back. If you are an Intentwise user, this is going to look much different than the share of voice that you're used to in Intentwise. This tool is now live in your platform, in your Intentwise account, but it's a very new visualization from what we've had in the past. So definitely pay attention, even if you've used share of voice and Intentwise in the past, because there's going to be some new use cases that weren't previously possible. And if you're not an Intentwise user, definitely these use cases are still applicable for you. If you have another share of voice solution, you should be able to go in and at least take the clicking may be different, the buttons might be different, the visualization might be different, the use case itself should still be similar. So definitely some beneficial use cases for you there as well. Awesome. So the first use case I want to dive into is just looking at that trend line data that we talk about, right? So maybe we wanted to look at a specific keyword that we were really focused on performance for. So I might come to this keywords tab, and maybe the keyword I'm really focused on is this word, drones for kids. And I want to know, what is my specific performance against that? So here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, let's look at the last 60 days, right? And a little bit of gaps in the data because this is such a new platform from Intentwise. So maybe let's look at the last 14 days and let's look at this daily. I want to look at what is my average organic position. So this data is being captured 4 times a day. What's the average position I show up on for drones for kids from an organic perspective? How is that changing over time? All right, so I might see, okay, my average went from 21, 18. Looks like we had a day of a gap there. We went to 19, 17, right? So there's looking at this here, maybe our trend has slightly improved, but if I've been focusing on this keyword drones for kids, I haven't seen something that proves that I've seen a steady improvement in my average organic position, right? So maybe this is an opportunity where I need to dive a little bit deeper into my SEO for this keyword drones for kids, because maybe I implemented this change 14 days ago and I'm really not seeing much of a material change in my average ranking here. If I wanted to dive more into who is seeing good performance here, right, I can click on this drop down here and see all the top brands for the keywords drones for kids and what are their average rankings that they have. So we know we aren't going to show up in this top 10 because our average is never in that top 10, but what are the products that are? So maybe this brand Holy Stone, right? I can see them 2 or 3 times here and they have an average organic position of 2, 7, and then this means if they're not showing up, they're only showing up from an ad side. They're doing pretty well from an organic perspective on the brand, or this brand here that's in the first placement. So if I wanted to dive more into what this ASIN was doing, I could just click this product here and see what keywords are they specifically focused on, right? This ASIN is showing on the keyword drones for kids, and drone kit. So maybe I need to also put focus, so I'm trying to show for drone for kids, on the word drone and drone kit as well. Right? So I can really dive into a specific keyword to make inferences on how is the organic changes that I've been making, having an impact. Maybe I want to see what brands are doing well over time, right? I saw what brands are doing well in a snapshot, but are any brands making performance changes? I could come to the brands tab here, and let's say I want to pin these top couple of brands. Maybe I said, Holy Stone's doing well. I want to look at Holy Stone. I want to look at X Shop. Let's see how they're doing. So I can see all these brands trended over time. And then let's put a filter on for that specific keyword. Right? We were looking at, let's pick a new one. Maybe it's Wi-Fi drone. How is that doing over time? And we can see that a lot of these brands aren't showing for that keyword specifically. So let's pick a different one here. Let's just pick the keyword drones so that we know that those are are showing there. Maybe just the keyword drone or drone kit. Let's try that. And maybe drone 4K. Let's just throw a couple in here and see how those are trending. Right. And then let's look at their total share of voice. How is that changing over time? So for each of these brands, we can see for each keyword, how is this keyword trend going over time? And this is actually looking at our brand. So let's refresh this so we can get all the other brands pulled up here. So how are these trending over time? So we can see that for our brand specifically, that's what we're seeing at this top side of things. Our total share of voice, this is only pulling in for Holy Stone. Again, this isn't real data. This is data that's been generated for this tool specifically. So that's why you're seeing that there's 0 percentages. Your data set probably look a lot more fleshed out, right? But I might see, okay, I've actually seen my total share of voice start to see some good increases in recent times, right? Maybe I'm not going to look at today's data because it's probably not fully captured, but I saw, 11%, 9%, 8% compared to 6% earlier in the month. So maybe I've done some good, Holy Stone's a competitor of mine. Maybe I've done really good I implemented a conquesting strategy against their ASINs. So I've seen good performance coming out of that, right? That would be something that I could dive into and take an inference out of here and then, go report back to my stakeholders that we're seeing progress against that. A couple questions that we have in the chat that I wanted to walk through. What is inclusive of a total share of voice? Is this organic plus ads? Great question. Yes, so total share of voice is going to be your combination of your organic share of voice and your ad share of voice. So you can see here, we also have organic and ad share of voice. And this is going to be all of the placements. What's your total, right? So organic's going to have a heavier weight just because there's more organic placements, but this is going to be a combination of across the entire first page, what was that percentage of share of voice that you had. For competitor brands, is this data their average or best organic rank? Awesome question as well. We have both. So I can see for all my competitors on the keywords that I have entered here, right? I'm filtered down to just these keywords. For all my competitors, what's their total share of voice, right? So I can see, DGI and Holy Stone are my top performers. I'm not, not trended, but even just across those entire 14 days. What's their organic and ad share of voice? What's their average position that they're showing up in, their average organic position and their average ad position across all of their ASINs, right? So this number is typically going to be a little bit of a higher number or a lower performer just because if they have 23 products showing, and I could click this to see what those 23 products were. If I have 23 products showing, they're not all 23 going to be the top ranking ASINs. So you're going to have some that are lower ranking, and that's going to bring this average position down. But you can also then see their best organic position, right? So I can see, all right, well, DGI is pretty steadily holding the best organic position because they're the only ones that have a 1 here. So that's a brand I might want to dive more into. And then a couple more questions that we got. Given all the available positions, which you never usually hold 100% share of voice, is there a standard for what's good? Yeah. Great question. You'd be very surprised if there was a 100% share of voice, especially when we're looking at a more extended time period. So what we're capturing here is every placement on page 1, 4 times a day over, in this case, a 14-day period, right? So that would mean that every time this data is captured, which it's been captured over 60, 70 times, you've owned every single placement there. If you're a smaller brand and don't have much competition on branded terms, there's a chance you could get close, but you're really not ever going to see that this gets very close to 100%. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's a threshold that this is good because it's going to depend so much on how competitive your category is, right? If I'm selling earbuds and I'm just looking at the term earbuds as it is, that's an incredibly competitive term. So I'd probably be happy having 2 products on the first page, right? Because there's just so many huge brands going after that if I'm a competitor in that space. Versus if I'm selling, a more niche product, maybe I'm selling, or even if I'm selling earbuds, but I'm selling, I'm looking at the search term noise canceling earbuds for kids, probably a little less competitive. So I would want a higher share of voice percentage there. So instead of saying, is this, quote unquote good, I would compare what do I have versus what do my competitors have, right? Where am I ranking within my competitors, right? Maybe if I was the brand Hoover Air, right? Okay, am I happy with being the 6th ranked brand for these keywords, right? If I am, that's great. But if not, then maybe I'm not reaching my standard yet. They only have a 0.3% organic share of voice. So I probably wouldn't be happy with my organic share of voice, but I'd be happy with my ad share of voice. But I definitely want to make gains in these keywords for them. And then I'd look at things trended over time. Are we making gains? Are we seeing losses? Definitely relative to what competitors are seeing trended over time as well. Do we rotate the location that we're searching in for rankings? Yes, we definitely rotate. We're not just searching, in one area because there is definitely changes in rankings across different geolocations. So that's definitely taken into account. Are there plans to add search volume to this? Could be interesting to see share of voice terms on high versus low search volume terms. Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely, I think we have one thing that's a newer feature that you can see that's more of a volume is you can see on a product level how many units has been bought for that product. So when you go and search for a product, on Amazon, they have that new call out where it's, X amount of ASINs sold. This is going to be, we're going to bring in this data so you can get that idea. In terms of search volume, it's not present at this time, but I do think that's definitely something we want to bring in here. I think there's hopes and intentions to combine this with search query performance data at some point, either bringing search query performance data here or bringing share of voice data to the search query performance tab so that you can use those data sets in unison, getting search volume, getting your impression share, your click share, those type of things in tune with what's the positions that you're ranking in and things along those lines. Any plans to create share of voice on product pages themselves? That would probably be a little bit tougher. I don't think there's anything that we have in the plans right now, just because there's so many rankings on there, and we'd have to look at those specific ASINs. But that's definitely some great feedback. If that would be helpful, we can definitely talk through that and add that to our product roadmap as well. That's a great call out. Might be interesting to explore creating some sort of metric for good share of voice. I think that's a good call out of what's like a standard. I think it's definitely tough because there's so much relativity to that. The tough part of that is if I'm DGI, right, a good share of voice on the same keyword for me as Hoover Air, we have different standards, right? That would be the tough part in creating a flat metric of this is a good share of voice, right? So if I'm Hoover Air, I'm a competitor brand. I'm probably happy with 5% total share of voice on the keyword, drones for kids. It's probably a competitive keyword. I'm probably happy with having 5% coverage of that, especially if I have 11 ASINs versus 23 ASINs. So that's probably a strong place for me to be versus if I'm DGI and I have 31 products and I'm the category leader, 5% search share of voice on a keyword is not very a good performance for me. I probably want to be closer to 15%, 20%, right? Because I have so many products and because I'm a category leader, right? I should have some validity because of that. So that's where it's tough to say, hey, here's a standard. If you're above this, it's great, because there's just so many different factors that play into that, whether it's what are you in terms of your category? How competitive is the category? How competitive is the keyword? So I really think it is relative to your brand situation, and that's analysis that you need to just sit down with your stakeholders, the people at your brand, other people that you're working with, and identify like what's our goal, right? What percentage of search volumes, what keywords are important to us, and then what percentage of that search volume do we want to make sure we're capturing, right? I would take the time and go through that process and identify. I think you can use tools like Share of Voice to identify what are the keywords where we have opportunity. Right? And then once you identify those, what ranking would we be happy with? Do we want to be third in our category? Do we want to be fifth in our category, right? Because that's going to be different relative to where you are today. So when it say, hey, we need to be the category leader on every keyword, that's probably, unless you're already the category leader for the product category, it's probably not a realistic goal. But hey, we're eighth right now. In 3 months, we want to be third or we want to be fifth. Right? Those are the type of goals that I would go at this with. And then we can use this data trended over time to track our progress towards that, whether that's from an organic or an advertising perspective. What causes this hiccup in data? Some days are missing positions. Great call out. You can see that up here. Two reasons for this. One, the most likely here is what you're seeing here isn't a brand's real data. Just not to not expose any specific brands' data sets just for data privacy there. This is just example data. So you shouldn't see the same gaps in your data set, except for if you just didn't show, right? There is definitely use cases where maybe your product was out of stock, your product was suppressed, you just had you're towards the end of the page normally, and you fell a couple rankings that day, right? There will be scenarios where you see missing data here because your product or your competitor's product wasn't showing on the first page of search results that day when the search data was captured. So there is certainly use cases where you would see missing data. In this case, though, probably more of this not being the actual data itself versus any issues with data quality. There shouldn't be any, this data has been tested and validated several times. There shouldn't be any issues with data quality. If you're seeing gaps on your end, it's likely because a brand is falling out of those rankings. Yes, so great question. Is this tracking the first page only? Yes, so currently we would only capture the first page of data to just give a holistic view of those, the placements that are getting the most percentage of our search volume that's present in the platform. Awesome. Another question that we have on the overview tab, are we able to filter out branded terms in order to see overview share of voice on non-branded terms? Great question. So on all of our dashboards that you see in here, and whether you're using Intentwise or another platform, this is definitely something I would recommend doing, is filtering between branded and non-branded. So on all of these different tabs, you'll see a filter option for keyword type. So these are actually by default going to be filtered to show you just non-branded keywords, but I could flip between branded and non-branded here or show them both together. Right. I just took off the filter if I exited it out. So that's gonna be available across all. And then you also could take this a step further when you're setting up your keywords for tracking in the share of voice settings tab down here. You can assign a category to each of them. So you could say this keyword is in, if again, in my headphones example, this keyword's a noise canceling headphones keyword, this keyword's a comfort keyword. I can assign those categories there, and then that'll be a filtering option for me as well. So you can see them, those are already pre-baked in here as well for this example data set. Do brands see dramatically different results when they set up daily tracking versus 4 times a day? That's a great question. I wouldn't say, it depends on your brand's use case to an extent. Organically, you're probably not going to see dramatic changes, right? You shouldn't. It's more an accuracy thing, especially on the organic side of the house, right? You might just see that we saw a dip when this search happened to happen. Things across time, if we're looking at things holistically, should be fairly similar, but we just have more data to work off of, right? The more data we have, the more accurate and confident that we can be in the tracking of that across the board. From an ads perspective is where that becomes a little bit more of a potential for change, specifically because if you were running a day parting strategy, which more and more brands are, that one run may come when you have your bids high or your bids low, and that's going to skew, right? We don't want to just capture a time when you're off or a time when you're really increased, and that's going to skew what our data sets are. Or even if you're not doing day parting, a competitor might be doing day parting, right? So on an ads perspective, that 4 times a day capturing gives us a broader perspective of what's happening throughout the day, with bids being different at different points in the day. Awesome. Appreciate all the questions, guys. Those are all super beneficial. Want to dive into another use case here now, though. Really still thinking about tracking, but doing this more on a daily level, right? And I want to see things across the board on a more from a more holistic perspective, right? So if I'm looking at brands, keywords, or products, and I want to see how is something trending daily, I could come to this daily tracker tab and I could filter between different metrics and a different filters here as well, right? So maybe I want to look at what is organic share of voice percentage, and I want to look at just non-branded keywords, and maybe I want to look at drone camera, 4K drone camera, anything that has camera in it, right? I'm really interested in camera keywords, right? So let's just select all of these, select all 52, right? Or I could just do contains camera. That'd be another option for me, right? I want to look at things that contain camera. How are people doing on camera specific keywords, right? So I can see what are the top brands for camera specific keywords by time, right? So let's look at DJI. Right? Okay, well, it looks like they did really well the 11th and the 12th, right? So maybe that's something I can take a note of. Could I go and look at? Was there a change in their organic strategy on these days, right? Did I notice anything different? Did they have a badging change, right? That's something I could go dive into. But they pretty consistently, right, are around that ranking there. Maybe I see that Holy Stone has kind of seen some increases, right? They've gone from 6.2, 5.2 in the last 4 or 5 days. They've been kind of trending around 8 to 9%. So they've seen some good increases. And if I had my own brand here, that'd really be what I'm looking to identify as well. But it's like, what am I seeing as my trends over time? Maybe I also want to see who's focusing on this from an ad perspective, right? Who's really focused on the camera terms from an ad side, right? And so I might see, okay, in this data set, maybe there's not anything that's super trended, except maybe I see this brand here, right? We've seen they're 4%, 7%, 8%. And in the last 3 days, they've been 0 or 2%, right? So maybe they turned off their ads on the camera search terms. So 2 things that could come out of that. One, I see a couple other brands that's gone from 5%, 3%, 0%, 5%, 0%. I could take into account maybe Prime Day had an effect on that, right? Brands spend a lot of their budget on Prime Day, so they have less visibility now. Or maybe that's just not a good performing keyword for them. And I might want to go check on what's my performance for keywords that contain the word camera from a conversion rate perspective, click-through rate perspective, to see, one, if it's not performing for me, maybe I need to do a similar trend and shift my budget away from keywords containing the word camera into other keyword categories. But if it is performing well for me, this might be an opportunity for me to push harder on this keyword, because I see that like several of my competitors are pulling back. Well, by identifying that's happened over the last 2 or 3 days, I can make a quick shift and go in and push more dollars there. And I think that's a key call that I want to make here is share of voice should be something that you're using as more of an operating metric, right? I think our hope in building a lot of these different views for you is that there's easy ways that I can come in and look at things like a daily tracker, and I could look at certain keyword categories, certain brands, and just spend 30 minutes a week doing some analysis here and identifying opportunities so that I can make quick shifts relative to what my competition's doing, right? If I see this type of ad shift, I can, if this is a well-performing category for me, I can go push more dollars here. I can track my SEO doing on my organic keywords, right? If I have top keywords, right, I can come to this keywords tab. I could look at my brand in particular, right? I can filter this to just show my brand, show what's my organic share of voice by day, right? So for, what keywords are we doing well on? This drones keyword, right? That's probably the biggest keyword in my category from selling a drone. Usually just the product name is probably the highest search volume keyword in your category. Well, I could see here the last 3 days, I've been 6%, 6%, 8% versus, I'm looking earlier in the month and I'm at 4%. Yeah, that's really where I was hanging, right? 4% to 5%. So I've seen a gain in my organic share of voice on the keyword drone. I could flip this and look at, if I went back to the keywords tab, been filtered for the word drone, which brands I've seen shifts down in that, right? That's probably my next step. But I would also identify that, hey, if we've been putting focus on our organic placements on the keyword drone, those are going well, and we should continue that process there. You might see the inverse somewhere, right? Like I see drone kit, maybe 4%, 4%, 2%, and now 0%. Maybe I need to go and look at why am I falling off, right? So maybe I'd look at what was my best organic position there? Was that already really low? So yeah, 27, 40, 37. So maybe I just fell off the page, right? Because I wasn't ranking very high as it was. So I still want to dive into why that happened, right? Did I take the word drone kit out of my title? Did I take that out of my bullets, right? Is that something that I need to add back in to get some more volume around to the search term? What brands are doing? Maybe I'd want to go to the products tab, and we're looking at the word drone kit, right? So I might put the filter here for the keyword drone kit. If I apply this, I can see, okay, here's the top ranking ASINs for that over maybe the last 7 days, right? Who's having the best organic share of voice? So maybe I'd filter this by best organic position in the highest order. Okay, so these brands are doing really well organically on the keyword drone kit, or these ASINs specifically, right? So this ASIN's got 2% of the overall share of voice. So I would probably want to go dive into this ASIN. And I guess a quick call out before I get to that point, you will pretty much always see the organic and ad share of voice are going to be lower on an ASIN level than a brand level. So you see, we were seeing 15%, 14% before, now we see 2%. That's what we would expect, right? Because one product cannot not have the same share of the entire page as a brand does. So take that relatively, right? But I might see, okay, this ASIN's doing really well. I'm going to click this button here, open it on Amazon, and identify what they're doing well. So I can see here they have the word drone kit second in their title. So they're really focusing in on that keyword. Maybe I need to add drone kit to my title if it's not in there. And maybe I need to move it up in my title if it's an important keyword for me. So that type of analysis is definitely what we would want to work through, using share of voice as more of an operating metric for us and something that we check in on a regular basis here. And I think these filter options and things that are available here is definitely the best way for us to dive into specific products, specific brands, right? What brand, how is a certain brand doing, right? I might want to look at, like we've looked at DGI a couple of times, what products are doing well for them, right? Maybe I filter for DGI and I see what products do they have that are doing really well, right? What products do they have that have the highest total share of voice percentage, right? Well, if it's this one here, all right, well, let's look into what they're doing on this product. This is their hero product. How are they working on it? Do they have their messaging, right? That's something I could really dive into. I could click here, see what keywords are they focused on ranking on, right? So they're focused on a drone with camera 4K, drone 4K. So really focus on those 4K terms. How can I work that in, right? That type of analysis is what we want to do. And then it takes it back to our brand and looking at this daily tracker data. Once we identify those opportunities from competitors, we take it back to our brand and look at, how are we seeing performance trend over time as we go and implement some of those changes to our products. So really just a couple, I guess one other call out here. While all this data is great, there's lots of great visualizations for manipulating your data here. If you're like, hey, I really, really need to dive into why did I see changes on the word camera drone, what's happening there? All of the data that's being captured every single time with that up to that 4 times a day frequency is stored in this raw data tab. So we want to make it super easy for you to do your own analysis if you need to dive deeper than even what these pre-visualizations are here to offer as well. So kind of hopefully those use cases are helpful. Hopefully we can think through what that workflow might look like for us, right? And I definitely encourage you, again, this should all be live in your Intentwise account now. If you're an Intentwise user, I would definitely encourage you to go dive into your share of voice. And even if you're not an Intentwise user, go dive into your share of voice data if it's been a while and really get some insight into what are the opportunities you have, Where are you doing well? Where have you seen performance dips? And then think about how could you change your advertising strategy, whether that's targeting more, putting more dollars behind that keyword, targeting competitors that are doing well on that keyword, right? How can that change my advertising strategy? And how can that change my organic strategy? Do I need to add that keyword to my title, to my bullets, right? Is it even there in the first place? What can I do off of that? So really identifying opportunities and tracking how my performance is either increasing or decreasing, which also in turn is going to help me identify those opportunities as well. So a couple key points from things that we walked through today. We want to make sure we're tracking changes over time. We don't just want to see a snapshot of our data, right? I could come in here, I could go to Amazon and I could search the keyword drones, right? And I could get a snapshot. Okay, these brands are doing well. And probably for the most part, we would see this data stay the same tomorrow, right? I would be able to see, these brands are probably doing well for the most part over time. But if I'm not looking at data over a period of time, I'm just looking at snapshots, I'm not going to know who's improving, can I go look at a specific brand? Did they see a badging change, right? We'll see that when we were looking at like the products tab and I was looking at specific keywords, you can see, did they have badging for these keywords, right? If I scrolled over, right? Did they have badging? Did they have badging changes? Are they putting this, are they spending more dollars on their ads on it, right? Without tracking things over time and trending our data, we're not going to be able to see when did something change? How are we improving? Where are our opportunities? Where are competitors doing well? Right, which are going to be what allows us to generate the strongest insights, right? If we didn't have trended data, we wouldn't have been able to identify that competitors were pulling back on a certain keyword, and then we can go dive more into that. So those type of insights, we're really going to need that trended data set for. So we want to use share of voice in that to diagnose the issues that we might have or the opportunities that we might have and track our progress as we start to use initiatives to improve against those. Make sure a voice a part of our weekly operations. Really want to hone that in. The share of voice should be something that we're using and looking at consistently. And then this should be the center of what, our keyword strategy, whether that's ad or organically, right? Obviously, there's keywords that you probably have as a focus for your brand, but this is going to be the best way to identify where am I the 6th ranker, the 7th ranker, when I'm the 3rd ranker in my brand, and I have opportunity to push more dollars, push more focus there to see progress improvements, right? So really this share of voice, along with like search query performance data, provide really strong points for building up, what's going to be your keyword strategy for the future. Awesome. That is most of the use cases I had to walk through with you all today. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat and I'll be here for a few more minutes. If you have any questions that come to mind as you're diving into the share of voice tool, please feel free to reach out to myself, even if whether you're an Intentwise customer or you're not. You can reach me at Kenton@intentwise.com, or you can message me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to support you however I can. Again, want to call out that Intentwise community link that's in the chat there. Would encourage you guys to join in there if you're not currently involved. And then be on the lookout for more Intentwise webinars. You can find all the events that we're doing on our website, intentwise.com. But we're doing webinars every single week. So bringing you guys new topics, keeping you guys up to date with what's happening in Amazon, what are some tools and opportunities that you guys can be taking advantage of. So really hope that you guys can stay up to date with us there. All right. Well, I haven't seen anybody throw any questions in the chat. Again, if anything does come up, please feel free to reach out to me. But I hope you guys all have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.